$1.2 billion in our savings account, formerly long-term reserve, now our catastrophic reserve fund. That is there to make sure we can meet the needs of our state. Secondly, we passed legislation that will allow for competitiveness in our economic development projects, one specific project in eastern Arkansas that will create hundreds of jobs if we're successful. But the General Assembly stepped up and said we want to compete, we want to win, this is the way to do it, and this is consistent with us bringing great paying jobs to all parts of Arkansas. And then thirdly, it comes to the historic tax cuts that we did. And on this chart over here, it is important to put it in historic perspective as to what we've done. In 2015, of course, we passed $100 million in a middle income tax cut. And then that followed the next session with the low income $50 million tax cut for low income individuals. We followed that with cutting the rates with historic tax cuts again, and the next time we came together, and then it is capped off with today with cutting the rates, which started out when I got elected governor at 7%. Now it is at 5.9%. Next January, because of the action of the General Assembly, it will go to 5.5 down to 5.3, then over time to 4.9. This is an incredible success story for this General Assembly and for this special session. But it's not just about the term cutting taxes. It is about what it means in people's lives. And if you have a husband and wife or two-income family that's making $42,000 a year each, that to them will mean $474, enough money that they can buy a new set of tires, or they can have a warmer Christmas and a more enjoyable Christmas. That is the difference of having the government have dollars versus a family having dollars in their pocket. Over time, it will continue to make a difference in their lives. Over 100,000 taxpayers will be eliminated from the payment of taxes as a result of the action of this General Assembly. We'll have a $60 tax credit for persons that are making lower income levels. These are steps that are designed to make sure that every Arkansan will benefit from this tax cut bill. Again, I want to thank the leadership, but also Representative John Maddox for his work on the House side as the lead sponsor, Senator Jonathan Dismang on the Senate side that carried this historic tax cut bill, and of course the Chairman Joe Jett of the Revenue and Tax Committee and Senator Sample, all great leaders here. But every member that's here voted support of it, and you think about the fact that it was bipartisan. I guess it's actually tripartisan, and that's a success story. Think about that for just a moment. And that's a tribute to the fact that they recognize that this is good policy, that we can join together in Arkansas and work together to get things done for the good of the people of this state. With that, I want to recognize our pro tem, Senator Hickey, for his comments, followed by the Speaker.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Of course, anytime you follow the governor like that, he steals what you're going to say. But I guess what the people of Arkansas have to know is that what he said was 100% correct. They should be proud of what they see, because this really was their government at work. The executive branch, the legislative branch, we all come together. We worked on this for 90 days, and something great, has come out of it. But most importantly, I believe, is what you need to see is the membership that is down here, that with all of the legislation that was passed this time, how important that was, the way that they came together. Some of you all may look at it and think, boy, that looks convoluted, but the end product is what keeps the citizens of this state going, and I'd just like to say that I'm proud of that membership for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Senator Hickey. This is, I think a resounding success. Over my time here in the House, I'm not sure that there's been a piece of legislation that has it been more engaging from both the House, the Senate end, and the executive branch. There are pieces of this legislation that you can look at that were brought to the table from the House. There were pieces that were brought from the Senate, and then obviously pieces from the governor's office. And we all came together and worked hard on that. And one of the things I would also say is, you look back to the spring and in the regular session, we said we wanted to come back and we wanted to do broad-based income tax reduction, and we've done that. We've delivered on that for all Arkansans, from top to bottom. We've done that, and that's something that I think is very important. I'd like to thank Senator Hickey, Senator Dismang, Senator Sample, and then clearly on the House end, Representative Maddox, who sponsored the bill, Representative Jett, who has done a great job on any piece of tax-cutting legislation over the past number of years, Representative Jean, who could not be here today, and I'd also mention Representative Fortner, our Vice Chair of Rev and Tax, who is also someone that has worked very diligently on this. But you look beyond that, Representative Ray had part of this was actually something he sponsored back during session. We were glad we were able to incorporate that in. Thank Majority Leader McCollum and the Republican House Caucus for their work on this. But also, as the governor said, it was a bipartisan vote, tripartisan as he put it, but bipartisan, and I think that's important. And so I think this is a very good day for the people of Arkansas. I think this is another step that we've shown over the past number of years of responsible reduction in taxes while still delivering the services that the people of Arkansas have come to expect. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we actually go here and sign the bill, I did want to recognize the work of Secretary Walther, Department of Finance Administration, that works so closely with the legislature in refining all the details. Secretary Mike Preston is here, who worked on the economic development side, working closely with the legislature. But what a great team. Thank you all for being a part of that. With that, let's sign historic, the largest tax cut in the history of Arkansas.
I'll give it to the governor.
Ready for the party?
So I have House Bill 1001 by Representative Maddox and everybody else who is here that has supported this. And then we have Senate Bill 1 by Senator Dismang and scores of others from the Senate side. And this is to amend the state income tax to change the name in the long-term reserve fund and declare an emergency. Most importantly, it is to create the largest benefit in terms of tax cuts for the people of Arkansas that we've done in our history. And with that, I'm going to sign this bill. What is it, 9?
Yes.
Always need a little help. It's now signed into law. Everybody in Arkansas ought to celebrate. Where'd the pro team go? Good.
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
That's all right. And I don't have a pen for everybody. I'm going to get what's that? Okay, there's actually. I'm going to let you hand it out. I get the best one. Best one. Here it is. I'll let you hand them out. All right. Size, maybe probably some more. And then, while we're, do we have the other bill?
They're right here, Governor. Okay. Right here.
Okay. Let me grab that. This is Senate Bill 10, which is to create the tax incentives for the credit for waste reduction, recycling equipment, which will put us in a position again to be competitive in soliciting and competing for great jobs for the state of Arkansas.
John.
And this is by Senator Wallace.
Get some of these Northeast Arkansas guys.
Good. Johnny. So, Secretary Preston, we're going to go out and win this project? That's the next step. All right. Let's see. Anybody else have anything else to say?
I don't.
All right. I think with that, we're available for. Do you all want to take questions here? You all need questions, or you want to go in a different environment? You got questions?
Whatever you want to do.
We could go there.
All right. Let's go here. We might need your help on some questions. All right. So, with that, are there any questions?
Just kind of describe your emotions right now. What did signing that bill, the tax bill,
My emotions are it's a reflection of 8 years of hard work, and part of it is convincing policymakers, those that question whether we can create enough growth to have these kind of tax cuts. You know, at the beginning they said we're going to be like Kansas, we're going to cut too deep, we're not going to be able to fund education. And so my emotion is that we showed that we can do it responsibly, as the speaker said. And that is the success story here. We're in an incredible position in our state with a savings account, with having teacher pay increases, investing the largest amount in a decade in education, and still having tax cuts. And it's a reflection of we're growing as a state, we're creating jobs, and that's producing a climate that we can be more competitive in our tax cuts. So my emotion is this is a culmination of a lot of work over many years to reach this point.
So when do you expect to get a decision on the U.S. Steel expansion?
Well, this was the critical step that puts them in a position to make a decision. We're competing with other states, so they're going to have to meet and make a decision, but I think it was expressed in one of the committee hearings that right now we're in the driver's seat. This puts us in the driver's seat and keeps us there. We don't want to lose that position. So we got the pole position, if you like racing. And so hopefully this will bring us to success. But as Secretary Preston knows, that until it's announced, until the final decision is made, it's not definitive. And so time frame, I don't want to put them under any time constraints for that.
With the original plan that you had rolled out, I think went to 5.3. This goes to 4.9. You early on in your administration had said you'd eventually like to get to 5. You weren't sure you'd eventually get there by the time you were done. You've also mentioned that the House leadership had kind of pushed for that. So just trying to figure out who's
we're going to pinpoint that in just a second. We're going to call him to the microphone. and seriously, it's great to set goals and then to exceed those expectations. And I think that's been the approach that I've had and the General Assembly has had, is we want to do this responsibly, and we've done that, and that's a reflection of the fact that I set a goal to get to 5% over time. We're getting to 4.9, and of course, as you said, I thought we could get to 5.5, but we're going deeper. 2 points, though, is that one, this is coming from the House members that really wanted to move, and some of the Senate members as well. The Speaker pushed for this to go to 4.9. Senator Hickey wanted to make sure that we had the right safeguards in there, which was to make sure we're funding our services first, and so there are some contingencies to get to that point, which I'm satisfied we'll be able to meet, but it's really the legislative reflection of those long-term goals and the fact that we're able to get to 4.9. Mr. Speaker, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I would just say that I think Governor Hutchinson has set the tone over his administration to look to make significant reductions when it comes to income tax. I think that particularly on the top rate, I do think that was something that, at least on the House end, we felt like was important, and it's not so much about me. It's these members that you look around this room, that I was carrying the message from what I was hearing from our House members. I think we're hearing the same thing on the Senate end. And so that's what I was talking about earlier, is that you see this bill as a reflection of a lot of different ideas for both ends and from the governor's office, and finally that came together. And, as the governor said, there are safeguards built into this bill. I don't think anybody would categorize me as somebody that's overly aggressive when it comes to things. I like to make sure that we're making good, prudent, practical moves, but we felt like myself, Senator Hickey, the others involved, and clearly the membership, that this was something that could be done. We do have some safeguards in there just to make sure that in the future that we're still in good shape. But I think we have a track record now over the last number of years of being able to cut taxes and still deliver the services the people of Arkansas have come to expect.
Senator Hickey, just a second. Senator Hickey, do you want to address that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think currently the surrounding states, Louisiana is the only one that has a higher top rate. Where do you guys expect at the end of this, where you're going to be comparatively, or is this kind of like a race at the bottom? The southern states.
Let me just emphasize that we ought to celebrate exactly where we are today. The largest tax cut in history. We've made extraordinary progress. As to the future, as to where it goes, let's enjoy this moment. We've got a plan out for the next couple of years. I don't think we need to go beyond that right now.
Hey, Governor, I have a question. Can you respond to the critics who have said that $60 non-refundable tax credit is going to equate to like 16 cents a day for some Arkansans?
Well, first of all, there was testimony in committee that this was important. Whenever you have a low-income individual, the tax rate is low to begin with. And so just because you have that $60 tax credit means that there's 100,000 Arkansans that was paying taxes that will have their taxes eliminated because of this reform effort. And so I think it's poor form for someone to diminish a tax cut, even though it's small, for an individual who happens to be paying a small portion of taxes. Percentage-wise, they're getting a larger cut in their taxes. But it's important that they're working and they're rewarded for that work, but we're reducing the tax burden for that. And a low-income individual, everything makes a difference, and they can tell you that. Secondly, you also have to, whenever we look at the last session, we reduced the sales tax on used cars. That was to benefit low-income individuals, which was a carryover from the Governor Beebe's administration, but we put it into effect that there's no sales tax on groceries. That was not always the case. And so this General Assembly has step by step passed tax policy that benefits all Arkansans. And I think it makes a meaningful difference in their life.
You
think it would have been more impactful to maybe lower and middle income earners to reinvest that back in the state? I know that was some of the arguments also.
Well, they're making the case that they would rather trust government to spend the money wisely versus putting it in the pockets of individuals. And I disagree with that philosophically. We ought to give more people more control over their money and their lives, and that's what we're doing by these tax cuts. They make the case that they'd rather have $500 million instead of in tax cuts. Let's put it in more government programs. And I don't believe that fosters independence. I don't believe it fosters work. I don't believe it helps us to improve education. We are investing in those separately, but let's don't take $500 million arbitrarily and say, let's put it in more government programs.
Governor, are you glad that lawmakers voted to adjourn today and not take a vote back?
Well, that's another part of the success story. It just reflects their high regard for Christmas. And of course, we all joke together about these things, but it just simply shows that they had a focus on tax cuts, the agenda that was called, and they did their business. And I am grateful that they did not have an extended session. You want to speak on that?
Sure, I'll speak on that. And I'm just going to kind of say things the way they are on this. Again, a lot of you all look at that and you think, man, how does that all work down there? But I can promise you this from the Senate standpoint, there is not a senator in that room that does not love the state of Arkansas. And that's not a little political speech up here behind a podium. That is the way that is. Now, we all kind of go different directions and things like that every now and then, but that's just the way it was. Now, I think there was a lot learned from this session, as there always is. Of course, we were able to figure out that some of the things that were being suggested out there, that they're not the best policy for the state of Arkansas. That's going to give us a chance in the off season to kind of look at that, work on that, and that's what a lot of us do behind the scenes. We've got a whole lot of members that aren't out front here today, but they are literally in the trenches making sure that policy does get directed right. We had some miscommunications with some of our law enforcement. I think they thought that a lot of the members, or the Senate leadership and the House leadership were working on a lot of stuff. We were not. We've all been dealing with a lot of COVID. However, those conversations are started, and we're going to see if we can do something there. So actually, there's been a whole lot of positive that has really come out of this. So, and again, I want to give full credit, to our membership with that, because it may be a process, but in the end, they really are to be congratulated on getting us all through.
One final question, if there is one.
This might be for either Speaker or President. Have we figured out what germane means yet?
Yes, sir. I've actually had it figured out a long time ago. But in the end, I'll tell you exactly what germane is. Germane is what, in the Senate, what 18 members of the Senate body think it is. Thank you. Sure. If that's okay with you. Sure.
A certain senator, suggested that some of the Republicans that didn't vote to consider the abortion bill were rhinos. So if you get a call from a constituent calling you for a rhino, how are you going to explain your vote?
Well, exactly. It's exactly the way that it is. And sometimes that's unfortunate, and I hate to talk about any member of our Senate, however, because you've asked that question. Here's the thing. We've basically got Arkansas has the strongest pro-life law in the nation. That goes without saying. We all here understand that law, is actually in litigation right now. We also understand everything that's happening with the Supreme Court. I think that the constituents of the state of Arkansas, the way that they look at it is we're in that spot, and I know the governor has said this time and time again, why wouldn't we wait to see how that comes out before we would even attempt to draft legislation. I think that's just a common sense approach, that we wait and do that. That doesn't mean that a member is going to vote for it. That doesn't mean a member votes against it. But at least we have a direction to go, to have our bureau to actually put that in writing.
Mr. Speaker, did you want to comment?
I think that at the end of the day, as Senator Hickey pointed out, my understanding is Arkansas is the #1 most pro-life state in the nation, and that's something that's a credit to the membership here. I know it's something that I take very seriously, and that as a Republican for a real long time, it's something that I'm proud of. I think that we have to recognize that in a special session, there is a call that's put out. Now, there is a process to extend, and we took votes on that where certainly there was the possibility of the session being extended. I would imagine that probably every member here has pieces of legislation or legislation that they would like to file and would like to vote on right now. I do think that part of it too, as I look at it, is part of my responsibility as a speaker is to look after the institution as a whole. And the idea of extending special sessions is not something that has widely been utilized or even suggested. And so we had a process in place. I think the process worked today, but I would have said the process worked even if we had extended the session, because at the end of the day, the membership takes votes. Votes can be difficult, and I know that there are a lot of different feelings, but I think at the end of the day, the process worked. And with regard to statutory law that may be before the Supreme Court, we can evaluate what the results of that are. But it's also my understanding that that with Texas being in another circuit, it's not as if necessarily what happens there would necessarily be an indication of what has to be the case here in Arkansas, which is in a different federal circuit. But I think that the process worked. Again, I would have said that regardless of the outcome, and appreciate the membership working very diligently.
With that, we'll conclude this. Of course, the leadership, the members will be available for any additional questions. Thank you for being here today, and I wish everybody a Merry Christmas.